All right, this is the copyright disclaimer. The copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Fair use, fair use, fair use.
On April 18, 1846, New Jersey enacted a law which bound enslaved black people to indefinite servitude as apprentices for life to work at the will of their white enslavers. Under the new law, called an Act to Abolish Slavery, white enslavers continued to exploit and profit from the labor of black people who were now referred to as apprentices instead of slaves, but who were still unable to obtain freedom without a written certificate of discharge from their masters or mistresses. Though enacting the law allowed New Jersey to claim its state laws no longer permitted slavery, the act did not meaningfully change the plight of black people living in bondage there. Many of the same oppressive provisions that defined enslavement in New Jersey and elsewhere remained in place under this new law. The act prohibited black apprentices from leaving the state of New Jersey, for instance, and imposed criminal penalties on any person who hid or harbored an apprentice or helped them run away. Decades earlier, in 1804, New Jersey had passed the Gradual Abolition Act, becoming the last northern state to take any steps towards the process of ending enslavement within its borders. That law had also fallen far short of abolishing slavery, instead delaying abolition for decades and ensuring that black children not yet born would spend their youth in bondage. The 1804 Act provided that children of enslaved people born after July 4, 1804, would be freed only when they reached the age of 21 for women and the age of 15 for boys. Despite the passage of this 1804 Act, there were still more than 2,000 black people enslaved in New Jersey by 1830. Like the 1804 law, the 1846 Act also failed to abolish or even attempt to abolish enslavement in New Jersey. It took the Civil War and the 1865 ratification of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in the U.S. except as punishment for crime, to emancipate the remaining black people still involuntarily bound as apprentices in the state.
All right, Shalom. We are the Hebrew Israelites from the Indianapolis branch of the Great Millstone. We're here to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Barak HaKodash. Double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching us this 100% truth. Salutations to them and our fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, also known as the Israelite foreigners and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, we say Shalom.
Shalom.
All right. This is another installment of our camp series called For Thy Violence Against Thy Brother Jacob. Topic comes from one of our sources that we utilize every week called EJI, which is Equality Justice Initiative. And today's topic is New Jersey orders black servitude for life. And here it says that act reads as, be it enacted that every enslaved person shall become and be an apprentice bound to service to his or her present owner and his or her executors or administrators, which service shall continue until such person is discharged therefrom as in hereafter directed. And that's the New Jersey Act to Abolish Slavery of 1846. And right off the top, this is some BS because the slaves were passed down as an inheritance to the children of the original enslavers, okay, as an inheritance. So before we get into it, let's get the opening scripture.
This is Obadiah chapter 1 and verse 10. It says, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever.
It says this is talking about Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, who is the wicked, according to Malachi 1 and 4. Okay, he is the ancient enemy of Jacob, who are the 12 tribes of Israel. And you see that, get that account of that in Genesis chapter 27, verses 38 through 41. Okay, he has always been the adversary of Jacob. And that he has been extremely violent, even to this very day. All right, cop shootings, that's the number one because they were blessed with the sword. in that Genesis 27, 38 and 41. The modern day sword is a gun, and it's slowly, but well, I won't say slowly, but it's about to turn into the ICBM missiles. Okay, but he's always used that weapon against us. All right, and we see time and time again, Esau has to either outnumber Jake or outgun Jake. You know, it's never, rarely is ever one-on-one, but he always has to have the upper hand. Okay, that's why they want to take guns today, so you can't fight back. They don't want to, under any circumstances, to when the odds are not in their favor. Okay, it says, and it says that shame is going to cover them, so it's being exposed. You know, their history, their atrocities, not only against Jake, but against the whole world. You know, it's being exposed every single day, 365, 24/7. You know, and they're being held accountable for it. Okay, but the true thing is against Jake. You know, he has touched the apple of the Lord's eye. Okay, according to the scriptures. All right, he's furthered that affliction. You know, we had a certain time we were supposed to deal with this punishment. No, he put his foot on the gas. All right, Zechariah 1 and 15 tells us that. Somebody want to grab that?
I get it. Book of Zechariah, chapter 1, verse 15. And he says, and I am sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease.
Mm-hmm.
For I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction.
Mm-hmm. And he's so at the heathen that are at ease. You're real proud. Okay, that's another way of saying that you're extremely proud of what you're doing. We had a certain time limit. You know, there's a certain way you're supposed to correct in righteousness. You don't do that. You know, you're a bloodshedder. All right, that's what you're all about shedding the blood of the children of Israel. Okay, and you furthered that affliction. You went overboard, and you still are. You know, the one thing we just had a week and a half ago, where you denied that, you know, the transatlantic slave trade was the worst thing in history. All right, and the scriptures even tell us that it is. Daniel chapter 9, verses 11 and 12. It tells you, under the whole heaven, you know, nothing has happened. Pretty much nothing has happened to anyone like it has happened to Jerusalem, okay, or the nation of Israel. And by you know, the United States denying that, but most importantly, Amalek, who calls themselves the chosen people, denied that. If you so much the chosen people, you just denied your own history. And you said that. I mean, we know you're not the people, but you just proved it with your own tongue, okay? And he says, you know, because of that perpetual hatred, you know, and what you did to us, you know, you'll be cut off forever. So the time is at hand. You know, we see these curses now starting to lift off of us and come onto you. That's, you know, Jake as a whole, you know, is kind of cool right now with everything that's going on. But it's the elect who really know what's going on. All right, if those Jakes don't have it totally right with repenting, you know, and turning back, you know, to the Most High, you know, you're gonna be destroyed. Okay. But, you know, Jake right now is like, you know, we ain't getting out there marching, blah, 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 blah. It's not going to happen. But the elect already know not to do that. Yet, repenting, staying circumspect, and, you know, doing our best to please the Lord. All right, so yeah, you're going to be cut off. Esau's going to be cut off forever, you know, when this is all said and done. All right, and there's going to be no mercy on him. Just like he didn't show any mercy, there will be no mercy on him, but we're going to do it in righteousness. All right? Anybody got anything? No? Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the article as you see on the screen. And once again, it's from the website called EJI, which means Equality Justice Initiative. We'll put a link to that in the description box. All right. And once again, it's titled New Jersey Orders Black Servitude for Life. It says on April 18th, 1846, New Jersey enacted a law which bound enslaved black people to indefinite servitude as apprentices for life, to work at the will of their white enslavers. Okay, and see, that's contradictory to that act. You know, it went on and further explained it. It says, you look back at the top again. It says, which service shall continue until such person is discharged, therefore, as it is hereinafter directed. Well, based on this, what we just read, it's for life. So there's no intention for them being discharged. I said those slaves were passed down, as an inheritance to the descendants of the enslavers. Okay. Back to the article. It says, under the new law called an Act to Abolish Slavery, white enslavers continue to exploit and profit from the labor of black people who were referred to as apprentices instead of slaves, but who were still unable to obtain freedom without a written certificate of discharge from their masters or mistresses. All right, and those mistresses, we always go into it. The so-called white woman is not innocent in this whole slavery process. There's a book out called "They Were Her Property," and it well documents, women slave owners. They had like 43% of slave ownership. All right. Back to the article. It says, though enacting the law allowed New Jersey to claim its state laws no longer permitted slavery, the act did not meaningfully change the plight of black people living in bondage there. Okay? It says many of the same oppressive provisions that define enslavement in New Jersey and elsewhere remain in place under this new law. The act prohibited black apprentices from leaving the state of New Jersey, for instance, and imposed criminal penalties on any person who hid or harbored an apprentice or helped them run away. And that word apprentice is just another term for slavery. All right? Esau's always changing words and terminologies so it will benefit him. Okay? Well, let's see what we can call this. So it's not against the law, but it is against the law. You know what I mean? All right? It says, decades earlier, in 1804, New Jersey had passed the Gradual Abolition Act, becoming the first northern state to take any steps towards the process of enslavement within its borders. The law had also fallen short of abolishing slavery, instead delaying abolition for decades and ensuring that black children not yet born would spend their youth in bondage. The 1804 Act provided that children of enslaved people born after July 1st, 1804, would be freed only when they reached the age of 21 for women and the age of 15 for boys. Despite the passage of this 1804 Act, there were still more than 2,000 black people enslaved in New Jersey by 1880. That perpetual hatred, man. It says,
all right, precept.
Go ahead.
This is Exodus 9:1. It says, then the Lord said unto Moses, go into Pharaoh and tell him, thus saith the Lord power of the Hebrews, let my people go, that they will that they may serve me. All right. So I bring that up because we know that in today's time, going to Revelations, it talks about how we are in spiritual Egypt and Sodom, or Sodom and Egypt. Sodom representing, many of the debauchery acts, Leviticus community. And then you also have Egypt, which in this article is pretty much, as everybody should know now, that the so-called blacks, Hispanics, Native Indians, as the Israelites, starting with the head apostles of Great Millstone, spoke of Deuteronomy 28, of all the conditions in which we would be in, and also, what the prophecy spoke, that the children of Israel will be scattered through the four corners of the earth, and in the places in which we will be scattered, there will be we will have no ease. All right. Daniel talks about that they will. The brother brought out.
Daniel 9.
No, yeah, I was thinking of Daniel. Yeah, what is it? Grab it.
Whole heaven.
Yeah.
Okay. The book of Daniel.
And we just did an article while he's pulling that up, and we just did an article. Well, actually, the scripture I was thinking of, in Daniel, was they would wear out the saints.
Okay.
You can still bring that one out though in 9. They will wear out the saints, and of course, until this very day, they're finding ways where they can continuously control the masses of people. Well, most importantly, the children of Israel. Why? When you look through the history of the Israelites through the Bible, you find that all the places in which, or all the kingdoms that thrived at their highest prominence of greatness, who did they have in slavery? The children of Israel.
Yep.
Okay, you go from the Babylonians or to the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medo-Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, all the way until to this day. You know, this very day, all the great kingdoms that have been spoken of. Now in this last time we speak of course, Trump being the modern day Pharaoh.
Yep.
The White House, you know, being the place, you know, that they conduct a lot of their legislations. You know, the wicked acts and decrees. That's actually a thing because of the law going trying to enact for the slaves to be lifelong slaves under this apprentice life, you know, apprenticeship. It goes into, you know, us their unrighteous decrees,
Right.
You know, setting their laws. You got that in Daniel?
Yeah, this is the book of Daniel, chapter 9, beginning at verse 11. It says, Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, because we have sinned against him. And that's that curse, you know. If we didn't keep the law, we would be scattered to, you know, every nation under heaven. And we will serve a people whose language we didn't know, you know, serve their gods, you know, and you know, it's going to be said that it's going to last forever, and that forever is until Yahweh comes back and delivers us, okay? It says, verse 12, and he have confirmed his words. That meaning, yes, you know, we talk about it all the time in those curses from verse 15 through 68. The word shall or shout appears 113 times. That means it's inevitable. It is going to happen. It must happen. Okay? So when he said he confirmed his words, yeah, just as I told you, I was going to do this if you disobey the law, it's going to happen. It says, and he hath confirmed his words which he spake against us and our judges. Okay? And our judges. He spoke against our judges too, because we agreed as a nation to those laws, statutes, and commandments. Okay? A pure example of our judges, you know, getting that work too. Jeremiah 17:4. It says, thou, even thou, I will discontinue you from your heritage. So, you know, Jeremiah had to take part in that as well. Wasn't as bad as the rest of, you know, the rest of the nation, those who transgress the law, but as a nation we agreed to it. And at Mount Horeb, okay? And Sinai, it says, and he hath confirmed his words which he spake against us and our judges that judged us by bringing upon us a great evil. Okay? And we see what that is today. Slavery, rape, rob, murdering, and unrighteous decrees, as you mentioned, you know, to keep us in perpetual captivity. Okay? Keep their foot on our necks. He says, for under the whole heaven have not been done as hath been done upon Jerusalem. All right? And you know, we just talked about that New Year's resolution. You know, even they know that, and the scriptures just prove that. It was the worst thing that happened. But dumb United States and dumb Amalek, especially Amalek, who calls themselves a chosen people. You know, if you were so-called chosen, why you just deny your own history? Okay? It makes no sense. But that's the nature of Esau Edom. And it was Argentina too, and we know that Argentina is currently run by one of those Amalekites. So, you know, it's the same people. You know, Edom, point blank period.
Okay. Let me bring this back. This is Exodus 9:2. It says, for if thou refuse to let them go and wilt hold them still, he says, behold, the hand of the Lord is upon thy cattle, which is in the field, and upon thy horses, upon thy ass, and upon thy camels, upon thy oxen, and upon thy the sheep. It says, there shall be a very grievous murrain. Actually, can someone pull that up for me? Murrain.
Yeah.
It says, verse 4, thus it says, and the Lord shall sever between the cattle of the Israel and the cattle of the Egyptians, and there shall nothing die of all that is the children of Israel. So I bring that out further is because the curses are now transferring
Yep.
over into our enemies.
Yep.
These cattle, this is like the livelihood of Egypt. The livestock, the substance, the riches, when you had substance of Egypt. And the Lord, it said, because, you refused to let the children of Israel go in that time, that which is then is now. And this time, now you see why a lot of things economically are happening, to the children, to America.
Yep.
Right? All of it is ultimately because the Lord Yahweh, through His Son Yahweh Shai, is going to save the children of Israel and bring them out of this modern day Egypt. Yep. You got that, Moraine? He said that he says there shall be a very grievous moraine. What is that?
This is murrain from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. It says a pestilence or plague, especially affecting domestic animals.
Yeah. So look, and in today's time, that we have like mad cow disease.
Yeah.
Right. You had you had like chicken flu or bird flu. That also dealt with the chickens and different cattle. That had these diseases. Right. Every once in a while, you'll have some type of livestock recall. As far as not eating certain meats that would actually go into the grocery stores. But yeah, that was it. I just wanted to bring that
I
out.
want to back you up when you saying He turned our captivity. This is Jeremiah 23, starting at verse 5. It says, "Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king that shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth." That's Yahushai. Okay, the one whom the world ignorantly calls JC. All right. Verse 6. "In his days Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely. And this is his name, whereby he shall be called the Lord of our righteousness." He says, "Therefore, behold, the days come, saith Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, that they shall no more say, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But Yahweh Bashem Yahushai liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country," which is America, Babylon the Great, spiritual Sodom and Egypt, okay, "and all the other countries, okay, whither I had driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land." And all those other countries, remember, in the curses, Deuteronomy 28:64, "You were scattered to every nation under heaven," all right, 4 corners of the earth, all right.
Grab Deuteronomy. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28:68.
28:68.
You got it?
Yeah. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 68. It says, "And the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy it."
And that buy in there is redeemed. And so there's a scripture. Go to Jeremiah 31:31, and then I think it's like verse 34, 35, because no one's going to be able to redeem us but Yahweh Shai, out of the conditions that we're in. So when we go back into the article, it looks as though Esau, though they hate us or have this perpetual hatred for us, and even had terms of go back to Africa or go back to your homeland, all these different things that they were saying. But the scriptures show that you actually gathered this up, and you brought us here over into the Americas to do for pretty much free servitude, free labor, so that this enterprise could be what it is, this day.
And the records reflect that too. There were records kept where it shows what the original names were. Most of the slaves had names that ended in Yah. Who was it? Well, Yah meaning he. The name of the shortened form of the father's name. They're using Psalm 68 8 and 4, so 64 and 8. You know, but that's for Yahweh. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have those records. Who own the ships? You know, which are Amalekites or your so-called fake Jewish people today, and that's not anti-Semitic. That's the truth. You know,
The first on the stock exchange,
Yeah.
you know, or Wall Street, you know.
And who started that?
Right. So a lot of these companies who were 100 to 30 years, 200 years, you know, like and running, not many of these banks, you know, when you talk about old money and things like that,
Yep.
a lot of that comes from the slavery of the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians.
Yep.
It was something, did we get that, Jeremiah?
I got it.
Yeah, kind of.
This is Jeremiah chapter 31 and verse 31.
Because he said he would send us into Egypt again with ships, and we know that this Egypt that we're talking about, relating that back to America,
Yep.
that spiritual Egypt, all right? And he said, there you will be sold into your enemies. And again, it's been now publicized that, you know, to the world, you know, all the nations on the earth, you know, have made a vote, like you're just bringing that back out,
Yep.
confirming, you know, the word of the Heavenly Father
Yep.
and his son Yahweh Shai, that we are the people of the Bible.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Wow.
This is Jeremiah chapter 31 and verse 31. It says, behold,
Jump on down.
verse 30.
Yeah, I think it's like 34 where he says his Redeemer. I'll see if I can find it real quick.
No, that's
I might be off.
His Redeemer.
Yeah.
That's Isaiah
like
47.
Okay, grab that.
3 and 4.
Yeah, my bad. Grab that one.
He's Isaiah 47.
Yep. Oh, that's in 50, Jeremiah 50. But the Redeemer is also mentioned in Isaiah.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm because he said no one shall buy you.
Right.
And that means redeem. And when I want to confirm, you know, the one that's going to redeem us is
Isaiah.
Yahweh Shai.
47, 3 and 4.
This is Isaiah chapter 47. Isaiah chapter 47 verse 3. It says, thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man.
Yeah, so when the Lord returns, he's going to return to a nation that is ran by the Edomites. He said, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that follow it. All right, go ahead.
Time back in Deuteronomy 24, it said, no man shall buy you. Here he says, I will not meet thee as a man.
I will not meet thee as a man.
So
Right.
that's him and all of his glorious power.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It says, as for our Redeemer, the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel.
Yep.
Yep.
And he's this is the one, when he comes to visit this place, he's going to be bringing salvation to the Israelites.
Right.
Right. And we confirm that several times that, you know, it's only the children of Israel that's going to be redeemed.
Right.
All right. For it says, Israel shall be saved with an everlasting salvation. You know, they shall not be ashamed. We shall not be ashamed nor confounded.
Right.
World without
That's
end.
just a couple chapters before if you want to grab it. Isaiah 45 and 17. Yep.
This is Isaiah chapter 45 and verse 17. It says, but Israel shall be saved in the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai power with an everlasting salvation. It says, ye shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end.
Yeah, that's world singular. Okay. Not a whole bunch of worlds. It's talking about the world of Israel. Okay. Cosmos. When you look it up in the Greek. Okay.
We'll get back to the article.
Yeah, back to the article. It says, Decades earlier, in 1804, New Jersey had passed the Gradual Abolition Act, becoming the last northern state to take any steps towards the process of ending slavery within its borders. That law had also fallen short of abolishing slavery, instead delaying abolition for decades and ensuring that black children not yet born would spend their youth in bondage. The 1804 Act provided that children of enslaved people born after July 4th, 1804, would be freed only when they reached the age of 21 for women and the age of 15 for boys. Despite the passage of this 1804 Act, there were still more than 2,000 black people enslaved in New Jersey by 1830. So this went on another 24 years. Okay? Just like you just read in Exodus 9 and 1. He refused to let them go. All right? But you're going to have to pay for that. It says, like the 1804 law, the 1846 Act also failed to abolish or even attempt to abolish enslavement in New Jersey. It took the Civil War and the 1865 ratification of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in the U.S. except for punishment of crime, to emancipate remaining black people still involuntarily bound as apprentices in the state. And we got to keep in mind that the 13th Amendment, was also a trick bag too. Okay, the Emancipation Proclamation was approved by Congress January 1st, 1863. Okay, this 13th Amendment wasn't ratified until December 6, 1865. Okay, Texas being the last state to do it, to have enough votes to pass June 19th, 1865. That's where you get Juneteenth from. But from 1863, I guess you can go all the way back to the early 1800s, where you had all those black codes. Okay, all those black codes, they were putting those into law. So by the time that the 13th Amendment was ratified, you go back to jail for breaking laws such as loitering, okay, not having a job, okay. All those would be felons. So you go right back to the plantation that you came from. All right.
Is that it?
Yeah, that was it.
All right. Precept. This is the book of Lamentations, chapter 4, verse 22. It says, "The punishment of thy iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion." See, we're in the last times where now we're toward the end.
Yep.
Like he said in Ecclesiastes, better is the end of a thing than the beginning. I like to bring that out because, when we first started the servitude, we had the spirit and, I believe it's Psalm 73 when, we're just thinking their power is strong, that they were just going to continue on in this power for a long time until the Lord brought us into the sanctuary, gave us this understanding, the apostles and elders, and we then know and understood their end, that they do have an actual end.
Yep.
They said many great kingdoms, it's been researched and been talked about, great kingdoms have ruled upwards to 250 years, and this coming July will make that 250th year. So we're in that last time, in the last points of this rulership, and so we know that the iniquity, the Lord is pardoning the 1/3 of His people. He's going to abundantly pardon many of our people in the daughter of Zion, which is the children of Israel. He says, "He will no more carry thee away into captivity." So this will be the very last captivity. Okay, we don't see it no more. "He will visit thine iniquity, O daughter of Edom." And how is He visiting? He said the Lord of hosts will visit with earthquakes, storms, teeth of wild beasts, spirits of vengeance, plagues. Yep, just like before.
Yep.
And we brought it up. What did He do before in Egypt? He sent forth plagues. All right. He says, "O daughter of Edom," He says, "I will discover thy sins," and He have discovered. This is a clear example. Out of the mouth of the prophets, He would reveal His secrets to His servants, the prophets, and this is one that we I've never, heard this, but the more and more we're at, what, 191 now?
Yes, 190.
191, and we're continuously bringing out more things, through the spirit of Yahweh Shem Yahushai that I myself haven't heard of. So I know there's, hundreds of others that haven't heard of this actual law. So in the end, we know that they want to actually, they have a plan to Kuragma, etching, a marking, impalement in the forehead, in the right hand, the forehead, right? That they want to make a perpetual slave. And so it's always been in their history, as you can see in this right here, that they've always intended to make the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native American Indian, so-called, and then of course ultimately the whole world in servitude under a wicked rulership known as these Amalekites today. If that's it,
Yeah, precept.
okay. You have something?
Yeah, we'll quick. Yeah.
All right, then go ahead.
This is Exodus 21:16. It says, "And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death."
That's why they didn't agree in that vote.
Yep.
That's spiritually, because they had the biggest, like you said, follow the money.
Yep.
And you just mentioned about the boats, the people who actually funded many of these ships, who actually, the insurance companies, the banking, these banking families, you find who actually got the lion's share of the wealth during these times. You always bring this out about war. Who actually followed the money there as well?
Oh, yeah.
Who's getting the lion's share of all the war?
Yeah. Who's that? It says they funded all wars, and we were talking about this the other day. It was Gutli Shatner Rothschild. That was the wife of Mayor Amsher Rothschild. She said, "If my sons didn't want war, there wouldn't be any." We were just talking about the United States about to be 250 years old, July 4th of this year, and yet they spent over 93% of their time at war. Well, what about the wars outside of that? She said, there wouldn't be, if my sons didn't want war, there wouldn't be any. So that other 7%, they're responsible for as well too. So 100% of the wars, are at the hands of Esau, Edom, mainly Amalek.
Yeah. And again, going back to what the wars and the things that's recent, you notice that it clearly switched. They still keep bringing up this war, mass destruction and all of that as far as Iran, but it clearly, for a moment you kept going back to their oil refineries and the Strait of Hormuz. That's all dealing with the economics, of the whole world. Do you have more?
I don't say it's about taking all the resources. They didn't just steal the people. They stole the resources as well too.
Yep, and that's where, and I gotta look at it, but Elder Yashawamba, I believe it is, that posted has a video that says Habakkuk chapter 2. I think it says 2 and 11 is in full effect.
Okay.
And so I have to look at that video. In my what's the name? But go ahead, Jeremiah.
This is Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 33. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, Yahweh Shemashai, power of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together, and all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go." This is speaking about the captivity here in America, here in Babylon the Great, where you have all 12 tribes, being oppressed by, the modern day Egyptian, which would be Esau, Edom, right? And these Amalekites, right? Just like how in ancient Egypt, all 12 tribes were in captivity, through the hand of that the Pharaoh in the ancient world, all right, which were Hamites, and it says, verse 34, it says, "Their Redeemer is strong, the Lord Yahweh Shemashai, power of hosts is his name. It says he shall thoroughly plead their cause, that they may give rest to the land and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. You know, just to land back the point on Baral was bringing about how no man is gonna buy you out of or save you from this captivity other than Yahushua himself, man.
God.
You know, because these best believe, man, Esau Edom, he's in that same spirit of Pharaoh in the ancient world. He still wants to.
Yeah, Salakia, I wanted to just correct. I said Elder Yeshua. This is actually Elders in Transit 3. That's Apostle Tahar, Salakia. He said Habakkuk 2 is in full effect. It's like 11-minute video, so I'm going to definitely check that out when we get some time. Go ahead, Salakia, brother.
Khan, that's all good. And so Esau Edom, he's in that same spirit. He wants to. He wants to have our people as perpetual slaves, man.
Yep.
And to ultimately cut us off from Yahweh Shem Shai.
God.
That's
but
just explain the MOTV to a T.
Yeah.
But through prophecy, we know that Yahweh Shem Shai has a remnant. That's not going to bow down to the image of Baal. And through the elect, the nation of Israel is not going to be consumed by the hands of Esau, Edom, and these other nations. So that's it.
Yeah. So with that, we hope that this lesson was edifying, uplifting, exhorting to the elect body of true believers. Before we end, we'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory to
Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rahakodash.
Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect scattered throughout the four corners of the globe. Until next time, all those listening and learning to you, we say Shalom.
Shalom.